I do my research about about New Zealand volcanoes. And what do you think? Why here in New Zealand so many volcanoes? What's the problem?
So New Zealand sits on something called the Pacific Ring of Fire. This means that it has two plate boundaries running through it. One being the Pacific plate and one being the Australian plate. What happens is those two plates submerge together. Once they submerge, this pushes up the ground above them. So New Zealand is it means that when these things happen, you get a lot of volcanoes, which is very uncommon for a country to sit directly on top of two plates.
I would like to ask you about what's the difference between existing volcanoes and the main volcanoes?
Okay, so extinct volcanoes are ones that have erupted but not in recent history. So they would be maybe over 100,000 years ago, whereas dormant volcanoes have erupted in our recent history and may erupt again in the future. Extinct ones are believed to not erupt again in the future at all. So it just is a tendency whether they're still active or not, really.
I think people worried about Auckland volcano, for example, Rangitoto, or which is one of Auckland's volcano you think may be dangerous?
Auckland itself, majority of the 50 volcanoes that sit in Auckland are mainly extinct. The majority of them have not erupted in recent history. Rangitoto is the only volcano in the whole of Auckland that has erupted more than once that we know of. There is a possibility that it may erupt again, but it's highly unlikely in our lifetime.
Are Auckland's volcano monitored?
Sorry?
Are Auckland's volcanoes monitored by scientists?
So across New Zealand, we use something called seismic monitoring, where it takes a reading of the seismic activity in the ground. So this reflects whether there's going to be an earthquake or not, or even a volcano eventually. We can take the readings of the heat as well.
Yeah.
Most of Auckland's volcanoes are monitored, but as a lot of them are extinct, there really isn't very much need to do so. Rangitoto itself is a completely different case. This, because it's in the last 500 years has erupted, people tend to take a lot of study into it in order to learn more. We're learning all the time, so we do monitor that one more than most others in the world.
Especially people worried about how much warning what we get if there's something where starts eruption and other in Auckland.
So a lot of the time we can get maybe at the very most a couple of weeks. This is to do with the fact that with seismic monitoring, a lot of the time it becomes a build-up of pressure rather than an immediate release for volcanoes. So we could get 2 weeks, we could get a week. It's quite variable on how much pressure there would be, but we would have warning time.
Okay, thank you.
So not to worry.
Do you think we need to monitor every volcano, each volcano in New Zealand?
Because we have so many different types of volcanoes in New Zealand, it's not necessary to monitor them all. Especially here in Auckland, that doesn't pose a massive risk apart from that of Rangitoto. And across the South Island, there's a couple of very dormant volcanoes that we really don't need to worry about. But you can take, Ngārahoe, Ruapehu, who are in fact active, and we've seen activity in the past few years that we should be monitoring.
Okay, which volcanoes have you visited?
I've been to quite a few. I've been to Rangitoto, Ngārahoe, Ruapehu are the main ones I've studied. Down in the Taranaki, I've visited a few down there, so it's very interesting.
And in my research, I read about how Maori in the past used to live around volcano, and they use the soil. And what I would like to ask you about what the benefit for the soil from volcano eruption.
So when a volcano erupts, if it's quite an aggressive eruption, it will produce rocks and different soil matter. These, when it comes out, they're very nutrient rich. So the surrounding area, although extremely damaged immediately after an eruption, it can the minerals and the nutrients can go into the soil, and this produces quite a nice area for growing crops or flowers. So some people seem to benefit from that, but it's not an immediate benefit.
About that benefits living in volcano.
I mean, it's quite difficult to know whether the risk is obviously something that people don't enjoy, but it can be quite a beautiful landscape. In New Zealand, it's quite difficult to tell whether there is any benefit at all, because we don't have massively eruptive volcanoes, so we wouldn't really know. There's not very many benefits to living around a volcano.
But there's lots of tourist attractions.
Yeah.
There's lots of people coming here to watch real volcanoes.
It's very interesting. We have our ski fields on top of the volcanoes, so in turn that structures provide a tourist attraction. I mean, Rangitoto is beautiful to hike up, and it's a very individual volcano because it's so new in regards to the rest of our country. If you were to go over there, you'd see that there's actually no soil on Rangitoto, it is all molten rock. So that's quite interesting for people to see. They produce a stunning landscape.
Okay, thank you.